A quick note about this podcast. My audio is just a little bit odd. I'm not sure why. Sorry about that. Hey, welcome to the Just Wanna Quilt podcast. I'm Professor Elizabeth Townsend Guard, a law professor at Tulane University, and this is a research podcast about quilting, copyright, entrepreneurship, and everything else related to the thing we love the most, quilting. So today we talked to Sara Seuberling of Electric Quilt. You know that. It's the software company that creates all kinds of cool stuff for us to play with to design quilts. They also have now republished Barbara Brackman's classic book, Encyclopedia of Pieced Quilt Patterns. Let's go chat with her.
I am Sara Seuberling, and I'm calling from the Electric Quilt Company in Bowling Green, Ohio.
Awesome. And what's your first memory of someone sewing or quilting?
My first memory would be my mom used to sew a lot. She actually had her own sweatshirt shop. She would make sweatshirts and she would applique on the front. And it was just these cute like bunnies or, cute little appliques that she would put on the sweatshirt. So I do remember that. I mean, that would have been when I was like 6, 7 years old.
How was she doing the applique? Was it a machine applique? Was it how was she doing the applique?
It was machine applique. Yeah. But I always thought it was so cool because she would get her own tags to put in the back of the sweatshirts. And I thought that was really cool. But she's always been sewing. We always had bolts of fabric in our house. And I remember when I went off to college, she actually made me a quilt to go off to college, which I still have today. She wasn't a big quilter, but she did end up making that for me, which was really special.
Oh, wow. That's very nice. So tell me a little bit about your life. Like, how did you get to where you are? Do you quilt or sort of tell me just a little bit about you.
Okay. I actually went to Bowling Green State University, which is probably a 5-minute walking distance from our office. At the time, EQ was hiring a lot of students from the university for co-ops and internships, mostly in the graphic design field, which is what I did. I was graphic design. It was actually called Visual Communications Technology at BGSU. And for that major, we had to have 3 co-ops. And I was like struggling to find my third perfect co-op to fulfill my requirement. And I happened to just run into a friend that I had been hanging out with, and he was working here, just helping out in the shipping department. And he's like, try it out, apply to see if they have any openings. And they did. And I got the co-op. And at the time I didn't really understand what EQ was. And I think that probably is a lot of people, they're like, what does, designing quilts on the computer? I don't really understand what that is. And so even though I, got the co-op, I still was a little bit blind to what it all really was. So as I got into the company and started working on things, we were actually we had just released EQ5. So I came in at version 5, which would have been about 2003. And they were putting out some books and stuff. And I actually had the opportunity as that co-op student to typeset one of the lesson books.
Really?
And
how is that? So did you, those are such great experiences, right? Because you really feel like you're participating and learning, and that's really amazing. So
and that actually really got me learning about the software more. I didn't really understand quilting as much, but I understood what it could do for people who want to use the software for quilting and designing and things like that. So I had that opportunity to do that. And from there, it kind of I kept going on the design, graphic design route, help with a lot of packaging and magazine work, like for advertisements and things. And eventually I got to testing software and then working on UI stuff in the software. And now I'm, a big part of the product development team and have, a lot of say in what goes into the software going forward. So
that's really cool. And you've been there now, you said 18 years.
18 years.
Seen it all. You're really part of that. So you're a kid right? Your college kid.
Mhm.
Was it just a natural transition from the internship to the job, or like at what point did they say you must stay, versus like the groups that keep coming through because that's just part of their internship? Like, what made you tell me a little bit about that transition?
I think it was, so my co-op was for the summer. So I started in May and I worked through the summer, and I really just picked up on a lot of things. And, that was just kind of my work ethic kind of, I think, stood out to them, and they could see that I could help out with the graphic design stuff more than what they had expected initially. And then that fall, when my co-op was over, I did stay on and work part-time. So while I was going to school, I would pick up a few hours here and there. And then I ended up going to a trade show in Peoria. I can't remember what show it was back then, but it was in Peoria, Illinois. And so that was my first experience around a whole bunch of quilters, and my first experience
after that.
Right. Well, just in having them come to the booth
Yeah.
and ask the questions that they're asking, it really tied it all together for me as to what their needs are with the software and what we need to provide for them. So that was a really good experience to be able to see that as, early 20 something, going into this, not really understanding it. And it just kind of clicked then. So then I stayed on part-time through, I think, the rest of the year. And then after that year, I got hired on full-time. So
I really like it. So if people are listening and they have kids, or they are themselves are in college, or they have grandkids, do you have advice on sort of, if you're doing an internship, like you really turned it into a career? So I'm curious if you have any thoughts about that, or do you give advice to people? I imagine you still have interns that come through.
Oh,
I'm curious.
Absolutely. Yes. I absolutely think that internships or co-op experiences are the best thing ever. Even if your major doesn't require it, I think you should require it for yourself.
Yeah.
As I said, my major required 3. And so the first 2 I actually did at 2 different printing companies. So I learned about, the back end of, the pre-press and getting stuff on a printing machine and just the commercial printing aspects of things. And I did it, one was local at my hometown. The other one was not too far away from Bowling Green. And I didn't love it. It was fine, but it wasn't something that I loved. And being able to do that third internship, I'm so glad that I didn't kind of, quote unquote, get stuck, I guess, in the printing world, because that really wasn't for me. Had I done my third internship at the same type of place, I think I could have potentially have gotten stuck.
Different things are really key. That's really
try different co-ops, because you never really know what you're going to love. I mean, like I said, I wasn't into quilting, but I started with this company, and I fell in love with the company, with the people, and the work that they were doing. So
I think that's really good advice. I mean, I think finding where you fit is a process, and we sometimes think that we know what's going to fit, and that's not necessarily true, right? That you have to really have that exploration.
Right.
So interesting. Okay, so that was a while ago, but I like that a lot. And it seemed also like you have an opportunity and an internship. Not always. Some internships are like annoying, and you just kind of aren't used very well. But you do also have the opportunity to shine and sort of put your best person forward. And it sounds like that's what you did as well. Do you feel like you give advice to the interns that come through about sort of making the most of that experience? Is there anything else, any other thoughts about that part of it, of sort of just be good and I don't know, just try your best and work hard? Or
Well, the thing is, like, when we get our interns, and now we hire in a lot more programming interns as well. So we used to just get more graphic design focused internships, and co-ops, but now we're also doing like product development, programmers, web developers. So we're able to get those students the opportunity to try out to see if this is their fit, but it's also giving us the opportunity to see if they fit here. Right. And it's been such a good experience. And I hope that they all do come away with what they wanted to get out of here. We do try to give them different projects so that they can see what, they excel at. When I first started as a co-op, I mean, the entire graphic design department was from BGSU. And still today we have, let's see, myself, Heidi, Jenny, Christine, Olivia. We have 5 graphic design interns that came from BGSU. We think we have a couple programming interns. So it's just such a good resource for us, and everybody's done such a great job here.
Do you find that you hire, like that's a way, like are you testing people? Because I've heard with the law, because I'm a law professor, that it's very nearly impossible now just to get a cold job, that they're really like the intern program in the summers are so crucial because you really do want to sort of see if you're a good fit. Do you feel like that's true with your company as well, that you'd rather hire someone that you've kind of grown, like taught how to do it and have them grow with you? Or do you still find that you're hiring outside of that system?
We rarely hire just like a random person that we have not had experience with. With that said, we did just hire one person that way. But prior to that, it's always been, a co-op or an internship that kind of led to this, or at least some kind of part-time work, whether it's like a side thing that they did for us or not. But it helps us feel more comfortable with that commitment to that employee. And it also helps them figure out, like, is this the right thing for me?
Yeah. And I imagine because you're so part of the Bowling State system that people kind of know what they're getting. That it isn't like, well, what's this quilting thing? But that it's like a main internship or co-op, so people know it. I would imagine that. They know a little bit more. Yeah,
it's convenient for the students too, because they can walk here. So so that makes it nice for them.
I love it. Okay. So when the students come, do you make them sign any kind of agreement, any NDAs or any kind of or do you just hope for the best? Sort of what's the intellectual property side?
Yeah, we do have them sign some paperwork just to say that they can't take anything from us and go and do their own thing. But we've never had any issues. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I think like when it is a big deal, it's a big deal. Like, you know what I mean? Like then then it becomes like a huge headache. All right. So tell me a little bit about, so in case people are listening, what is EQ and what are the numbers that go after EQ? Because we see EQ8, EQ5, EQ6. So tell us a little bit about the product and what it is.
So EQ is Electric Quilt, and it is a software for designing quilts on the computer that allows you to try out different blocks and fabrics and borders. And it actually will give you your templates, your foundation patterns, your rotary cutting charts, and your yardage for the quilt that you've designed. We are currently on version 8. So we are on EQ8. So if you see that around anywhere or you see hashtag EQ8, that's what that is. We have started, EQ1 back in 1991. And now in 2020, actually it was released in the fall of 2017 was EQ8. So we're on that version and it's just been amazing. The EQ1 actually started as a DOS program. So imagine that using your keyboard, trying to design on the computer, and it's quite interesting.
And you dominate. I mean, EQ dominates the market. There are others that come and go, but like you're really you're it. And it's really wonderful. Also, I hear people interesting about it is that people, first of all, that I'm interested about your thoughts about professionals, because we do see the pattern makers using it quite a bit. And I'm wondering how you think about that. But then also I see regular quilters, it's almost, they use it and they design it, but they also sit and watch TV and just play. Like it almost becomes like a game of designing things because it's fun and it's like you can sort of play and play and play and play and play. So it becomes kind of like a game in some way. What are your thoughts about that and sort of how the software is being used?
Yeah, the software is, it was started with a math professor, Dean Newman, and he was at BGSU as well. And he just wanted to do something different and something fun. And his wife was an art historian, and they decided to collaborate and come up and learn to program. Dean learned to program to create this as something fun to do. And when it first was released, that's what it was. It was just something fun for quilters to do, but they were actually getting something out of it. So they're getting, the patterns for it and actually just loving what it can offer as far as seeing the fabrics on the screen before cutting any of the pieces out. Going forward with EQ, I mean, people just, I'm completely blanking on your question.
Oh, I'm asking sort of what are the expected uses of EQ? Because I see it both
yes,
on the
professionals
side and also
yes.
the hobbyists
Right.
that either are designing or just like playing, like they've made 20,000 quilts, but they've never ever made them because they just keep making them in your system.
Right. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Yeah. So with the version that we're at now, we do have so many users that do use it just to play around with and, just click in some blocks and see the colors. But on the other end of things, we have a ton of professionals that use it and they use it on a daily basis. And some of them will use it just to give some rough estimates on their yardage.
Right.
Some of them will use it as the complete, okay, I'm making a pattern and I'm making it with this fabric line from this company and I'm importing that fabric line because that is, my own fabric line that I have just released. I'm importing it, making this quilt and promoting it that way. So there are so many users from all ends of the spectrum as far as professionals or just the, I want to play around kind of user. So
yeah, no, it's really interesting. And how do you feel about professionals using it and basing their patterns off of the software?
We highly encourage it. I think it's awesome. We hope to someday provide more features for the professionals so that they can do more with what they already have. We do get asked a lot, can we, write text on our patterns, on the templates and stuff. And, at this point we can't, but hopefully someday in the future, we'll be able to offer different opportunities for professionals so they can continue to grow their business.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a completely awesome thing that we can provide that kind of software that allows them to do all of those things.
Yeah, and it's really powerful. It's really, it's got a lot of features. Now tell me, let's break it down for people in case they don't know it and now they're intrigued. So you and then I have another, here's my ridiculous question because I have the Dear Jane version and I have a lot of it. My computer just won't turn on now. So do you get that a lot? So what happens when all of the software is on the computer and I don't even know where any of it is. Do we call you? What happens when that happens? Because it's really disturbing. I just have to say, I didn't realize, I was oh, it's going to be fine. I'll get a new computer. I'm wait.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. We can help with that. Our customer service is phenomenal and it's not to brag or be biased or anything, but we definitely, push our customer service as our top, our customers are our top priority. Yeah. So anything that you need, if your computer crashed and you had all of your EQ software on there, you call us or you use our live chat or you send us an email and we will work to get it all settled for you because we want you to have the best experience with our software and all of our other add-ons and books and stuff we provide too.
Right. And you're keeping a record of because I had an email conversation of oh, you've purchased so much of your stuff. We would love to chat with you more. So it isn't you're going to be well, who are you? You
right.
keep records of sort of what people are buying and what they're doing. So
yeah.
Okay. So let's go. Let's pretend I'm somebody who knows nothing about it. How do we get started with this system? So explain to me, you need the software, the EQ8 software. Do you always need explain the product to me, I guess.
Okay. So EQ8, which is our current version, it runs on a Windows or a Mac computer. It does not run on iPads or any non-Windows or Mac based devices. So you have to have Windows or Mac. And you will get, if you come to our website and you purchase from us, you can get a direct download. If you're buying from a quilt shop, which we highly encourage, or if you find it online, you'll get a boxed version of the software. In that boxed version, it's basically instructions on how to download it from our website. So essentially it's a download, which means it will always be in your account on our website. So if for some reason something happened to your computer, like you said, yes, you would just log back into your account on our website to download and install it. But then once you get it installed, there is an activation system. You can have it active on 2 computers at a time. We tell people you can install it and on as many computers that you own, but only 2 can be active at a time. So if you have like a work computer and your home computer and then your cabin computer or something, and you want to use it on all 3, if you have it active on 2 of them, you would just quick deactivate one in order to activate it on the 3rd one. So it's a quick like on off kind of switch. You don't have to uninstall and reinstall. It's just a quick little turn it on, turn it off kind of thing. But once you get it active, I mean, we have a lot of help tools built into the software. So when you open it up, it'll say, what would you want to do? And then it has help information right there. It does come with a reference manual. It is a PDF reference manual that you can download, or you can just use as a resource to look information up. The best resource for learning the software is our Lessons for Beginners book. It's a 128-page book that is step-by-step, fully illustrated, just taking you through the program. If you don't want to purchase anything, we have a ton of free resources available as well. So if you get in the program and you're like, I just don't know what to do, then you can definitely look at our free resources on our website.
And I would say for those people who are scared, it's not scary. Like there's a lot to it, but I don't think you have to be super computer person. I feel like you can do it at whatever level you want to do it at. And it's fun. I mean, it's not scary. I mean, I guess, and I think sometimes people do feel like, oh, well, that software stuff is not for me, but so
it is a lot. There's a lot of features in the program, just a ton. And some people are turned off. Like they might see like a video or a lesson on something that just looks so intimidating, but you don't have to use all of the features. Just because they're there doesn't mean that, oh, you need to be studying your quilting designs on top of your quilt. Like not everybody uses that feature, and that's totally fine. You use it for what's going to work for you. So even if that's just plopping in some blocks and changing some sizes and printing the templates, then that's as much as you need, but that's going to help you in the long run.
Yeah. What about, so you've got the basic, so you buy the basic software. Do you need the basic software for every product that you have? Does that always, like, you need to sort of have that investment of the EQ8 software?
Yeah, so our main software is EQ8. So beyond that, you don't need to have anything else, but we have a ton of add-ons that you can purchase. The biggest, most popular add-on would be our stash downloads, and those are put out 3 times a year. And those add about 1,000 new fabrics to your EQ library. And they're only $7.95 a piece. And sometimes you can find them on sale for $5. But those do keep your fabric library up to date with the newest fabrics that are out from the manufacturers. And again, we also always have a free option too. So every month we put a new fabric library, a free fabric library on our website on the 1st of every month. So if you don't want to purchase the stash, you can always get free stash as well.
All right. Now, the thing that attracts me to you I want to talk about the Barbara Brackman book in just a second. Let's also talk about Blockbase. What is the difference between EQ8, and is Blockbase a add-on or a standalone product? Help us understand what that is.
Yeah, Blockbase is a standalone product. So if you want nothing to do with EQ8, or you just aren't ready to dive into EQ8, Blockbase is a phenomenal program. All Blockbase is the blocks from Barbara Brackman's Encyclopedia of Piece Quilt Patterns book put into a software program, so that you can flip through and look through all of the blocks, and you can select a block and print the printouts that you need, the templates, foundation patterns, or the rotary cutting charts. So it's just a matter of finding the block you want and printing. It does come with a lot of information that Barbara included in her book about each one of the blocks, where it was first published and the name of the publisher. All of that information is also included with, very robust search features as well. So if you like those kinds of things, and you just want to print patterns and not really design quilts, then that would be perfect for you.
Now,
but if you,
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you do want to design quilts with Blockbase Plus, with those blocks, you can link it to your EQ8 if you own EQ8.
Right.
Yeah.
You can still link it. So if you don't need it, but if you want to design, then you need the EQ8.
Right.
software.
Right.
Okay. And then you also have, tell me a little, you have the, Dear Jane, I have it. I can't get to it in a moment, but I have the Dear Jane software. You have other ones. Tell me a little bit about the Dear Jane software and how did that come about? Because I think people really use that quite a bit now to make the Dear Jane quilt.
Mhm. Yeah. So we came out with the Dear Jane software, the original version, probably 2001, 2002. So and that was a standalone. You could use it without any EQ versions, and it basically gave you the actual Dear Jane quilt that you could change the fabrics. You can print the templates, rotary cutting, and foundation patterns for. You can do whatever you want with it. You can design your own Dear Jane style quilt with it as well. That again came out in 2001. And so it had a very EQ4, EQ5 feel to it. We didn't do many updates to that beyond the initial release. But last year, I think it was 2020, I believe, we released a new version of the same Dear Jane software, but this time it's an add-on for EQ8. So you have to have EQ8.
Yeah. And you can color and you can make choices and you can like track your stuff and you can put the I have a failed Dear Jane. I'm gonna try it again. So you can put your blocks into, like when you make a block, you can put it actually in it so you can sort of see the progress. It's really cool. It's really remarkable.
Yeah. So that was a fun feature to work on. I was heavily part of that product that we just released. And so having to explain to people that you can take a picture of your sewn block and import that into EQ and plop it into place so you can kind of map out what progress you've gotten done with actually sewing the block. Because that's a huge quilt. That is
it's huge,
years. Right? I feel like it should take years to do.
Yeah.
So keeping track of that progress is key. And to be able to do that within EQ is just awesome.
Yeah. It's so interesting. So the Dear Jane is an interesting product because it's a public domain quilt, but there's the one person who really kind of owns it in the sense of like, she's made it into it. Did you feel like I imagine you have a licensing agreement with her, but did you feel like you needed to get permission from the people that hold the quilt? Sort of what kind of intellectual property goes behind something like that? Because you've had it for so long.
Right.
Have relationships with people.
So we worked directly with Brenda Papadakis. She was the one who went through and created the original Dear Jane book. I don't remember when that one first came out. So she worked directly with the Quilt Museum, who holds the quilt, to originally put the book out. And then when we did the original Dear Jane software years ago, there was a whole bunch of talks that went on then that I wasn't a part of. But then when we started doing this again, we did have conversations and had to sign agreements with the museum, and they gave us the ability to use their quilt images in our software. But most of it went through Brenda. She had she dealt with all of that.
Interesting. And then it's got a trademark on it at the USPTO for the software. Was that her doing? And did she license then the name to you all, or did you? I can't remember. I'm looking it up. I can't remember if it was you all or her. Like, how did that happen? And do you often trademark the names of your, like, how important is trademark? I know, and you don't have to have it. You don't have to. That's a very oblique, question. How much is trademark important to your company?
We have Electric Quilt registered, but it was years before we actually ended up doing that. It was something that we weren't too concerned about. I wouldn't say that it's not important to us, but we just never really had a concern or felt a need to trademark it. But we did end up, Electric Quilt is registered. Sometimes we don't put the symbol on when we should, but that's as far as we've gotten with that. As far as the Dear Jane goes, is the Dear Jane trademarked? Is that what
it is? Software.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm not sure about that actually.
Okay. So that's interesting. And I think with trademark and with branding, your brand is so strong. Like the fact that like you can say EQ, everybody knows EQ, right? Like, and that's really the strength of the brand that matters. Like,
oh, I think I lost you.
I mean, like that's,
oh, okay. You're like cutting out. Sorry.
That's okay. Sorry about that. Are you good?
Yeah, okay. I think you're good.
That's part of why we're not live, dogs and internet connections. So tell me, okay, so the thing I think everybody really wants to know about is the Barbara Brackman book. The Barbara Brackman book, the Encyclopedia of Peace Quilt, am I getting it right?
Yes.
Quilt patents, is an amazing story. And we've interviewed her before. And it was really cool sort of for her to be looking in libraries and finding them from magazines and like doing the real, like, just going, and because of her job, she was able to go to all these different libraries. And then it's been, the Brackman numbers, the book, and Blockbase is based on it. And now, after so many years where people were like, it was like a treasure hunt to find a copy of this book. You've republished it and in color, which is, and it's beautiful. I have a copy of it. Tell me a little bit about that process and how that happened, because I'm really, it really is a beautiful book.
Yeah, we were so excited to get the opportunity to work with Barbara again. She contacted us, I feel like it would have been in 2018, possibly, and said, there's just a demand for this book. Like, what can we do? And it was not anything that was kind of on our horizon of something to work on, but it did kind of fall at the right time for us as to what we were working on. So we looked at it and was like, back in the day when we originally released Blockbase, we drew all these blocks because there was a Blockbase version 1 years and years ago.
Which is based on her book.
Right. And so at that time we went through and we drew all of the blocks from her AQS version of the book and put that into a software. And I was like, we could just do that again and give Blockbase an update. That was our thinking, is to give Blockbase an update. But as we were thinking more about it, it was like, if we're drawing all these blocks for Blockbase, what an easy thing to do to export those blocks to put into the book. Like, let's just do both of them at the same time. So we were, Barbara was thrilled, of course. We were excited to work on it. We are not a book publisher. We do not do books. I mean, we do lesson books for our software. That's what we usually do. So this was a little bit out of our realm. We were a little bit nervous going into it, but we couldn't pass up this opportunity because it made sense. If we're going to do Blockbase, right? We might as well do this book. Yeah. So we played around with a lot of like layout ideas and kind of were following her original scheme of how the book went. And it was like, people are going to want to see it in color. But if they have it in color, they might be kind of swayed to those colors. They may not love having it in color. Let's throw a line drawing in there too. So we had the line drawing and the color version of the blocks, and try to just lay it out so that it made sense to people and didn't end up being like a 800-page book, because it's a lot of blocks to cover. But we threw in a lot of photography of photos of blocks and photos of quilts, and it just really turned out to be a beautiful book.
It is a beautiful book. It really is. Now, what I'm curious about is how did you get this done? Because it's huge. It's a huge undertaking, but also the cost of it, because it is a very beautiful, well done book. It is gorgeous. And it's $60 on your website. And I think, how did you get it at that price? It seems like it would cost a lot to print this book. It's a big, beautiful, colorful, glossy paged book. And $60 seems like a great price for it when I look at it. Because we've been doing print, we've been doing publishing and stuff. I recognize that. How did you approach that side of it, the business side of doing this book? Because that seems daunting.
That was that was a huge discussion because like I said, we don't publish books, we don't print books. And so our original, we reached out to our normal printer that we normally work with. And he came back with a quote for printing it. And I was like, there's no way we can do this, without, charging people so much because we have to cover our costs, obviously. Right. And so, we actually had a new hire come in. She had worked at a publishing company prior to working with us. So it was completely perfect timing that she was joining us. And she had her name is Janice Frisch. She just joined us maybe a year ago. And she had some contacts for printing companies. And so she reached out and did all the grunt work, finding the best pricing. And she did. She found exactly what we needed for this. And we got the price to something that was going to be affordable for people, but also cover our costs. We didn't want to put out this book that people love and really want, but also charge them an arm and a leg for it. That's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to make it reasonable. So, putting all those pieces together, it just worked out really well.
It's so interesting because, I've been looking at, we're trying to start a new line of books. We've been doing IP and entrepreneurship, kind of DIY legal books. And now we're trying to do some sort of craft and IP books where we sneak in copyright so people don't recognize they're learning it, and kind of like sneaking in vegetables to cake. And so I've been looking at the prices and it's shocking to me. And then you look at the art books and they've got grants, right? So they've offset the cost of these beautiful books because they've got an NIH grant or they've got some sort of, and you're a private company that you don't have that option, right? You don't have a benefactor that's going to cover a bunch of the costs. And those books are still $40 and $60 that are these beautiful art books. And this one I would say is a beautiful art book. I mean, if you're a quilter, you could put this on your coffee table. Right? So it really kind of impressed me that you could keep it at 60 and have it that way, because that's not an easy thing to do.
Right. And we also worried about storage because, like you said, we're a very small company. We have, a small office. We have 15 employees, and we don't have the storage space that you would really need to carry 6 to 10 pallets of books, because these books are big. There's only 8 in a box. So there's a lot of pallets that come when we make an order. So we were really concerned about that, but we were lucky enough to get that worked out with the building that we're in. And they've been so helpful with us in storing our product in a different location. So that was very nerve-wracking for us.
Right. Because when you're trying to, first of all, this book's going to sell like crazy. Imagine imagine the sales are very, very good, because everybody is hungry for it in this crazy way. And then those that don't know about it are learning about it. So you've got this kind of nice right? But there's a nice crossover of the old timing quilters and the new timing quilters that are excited about it. But when you print, you get a better deal if you have a large volume.
Yes.
And then you have the problem of storage, which is what you're saying,
right.
Sort of balance, how much is it going to, you're making your employees everybody take the books.
Right. That's it. Everybody home. Everybody had a job during this whole process. I feel like every single person at this company, when we started the process of we're doing this book and we're doing Blockbase at the same time, we split it up. And I even remember mentioning at one of our staff meetings how impressed I was with how everybody had a piece of this. We could not have done it without a single one of the staff members and what they did, whether it was moving boxes, whether it was working with, the printing company, designing it, all of that stuff, drawing every single one of the blocks and coloring every single one of the blocks.
It is a huge undertaking. It's crazy.
Yes.
Now, let me ask you about the copyright side of it. So I really like that you constantly, I think I use it, I use the example all the time in my life, because I'm a copyright professor, that you recognize that the blocks themselves are not under copyright. So help me understand obviously the software is under copyright, the book itself is under copyright, but the individual blocks are not, right? Would you think that
the individual, most of them, and I am not a professional in this by any means, but most of them, and I believe it's after 19,
Yeah,
70 is sticking in my head. 1970.
Yeah,
Does that
so
sound right?
that's kind of my field. So I think there's two things. One is the date, right, which is before
Yes.
1978. If it wasn't renewed, it's in the public domain. If it's
Yes.
you know, sorry, the dog was being weird. If it was before the Depression, basically is what I'm explaining to people, then it's in the public domain, whether it was published or not. But I think in some way that we have another thing with these blocks, which is basic shapes aren't protected. And
Right.
so a lot of the blocks that you have, and when you say, well, sort of, the question really is, well, are they so intricate that they somehow now have copyright protection because they're more than just a block, right? So it's that kind of interesting spectrum where it kind of pushes into now your own selection, arrangement, or coordination of things and the quilts you make and all of that can be protected. And I look at like your hoot, your boutique blocks, your designer blocks, that they may have enough, it doesn't take a lot to get copyright, but those might have copyright protection. But I'm curious what your thoughts are about people using them. Like when I think about like all the designers, is there some sort of part where you're like, oh no, you can't use those kinds of, like most of them are out of copyright. They never were in copyright. They're too basic. Even if they're complicated, they're still too basic.
Right.
Where do you draw that line for people? How do people understand what that is?
We do get that question a lot, especially with our software, because with EQ8, the software comes with over 6,000 quilt blocks. In Blockbase, it has over 4,000, and in the book has over 4,000. So it's like, there are so many blocks, and like to have information on every single one of them would be ridiculous. But for the most part in our EQ8 software, those are all copyright free. So what we tell people is, you can't just print out those patterns, the templates and whatnot for those and sell those. You can't, that's against the copyright. You can't just take our exact block and sell it on Etsy, which we've had people do. If you want to take that exact block and design your own quilt with it and put your own fabric in it and write up your own sewing instructions for that quilt, then that's a different story. But, just completely.
But you feel that like, even like, let's say like you've put in, because for those that haven't experienced it, the blocks have like specific colors, like they're each of them look a little bit different.
Yeah.
And there's these kind of quick quilts in there and other things. So you're saying that if I took those blocks, like I just took the block that you had it and printed it, like I took whatever you had already done and printed it, that seems to you to be copyright infringement. Whereas if I really do sort of create my own derivative work of it, I make it my own, that you feel more comfortable with it. Is that what you're saying?
If you're trying to sell, if you're trying to sell it. Yeah. If you're using it for your own, I want to make my own quilt for my, my kid's bedroom. Sure. You can do what you want with it. But if you're going to sell that block pattern exactly as it is from our software, we don't appreciate that. Yeah.
Right. Because it's your creativity that they're now sort of there. So do you feel like that's happened? Like, do you feel like you have to police it? Like at what point do you have to sort of send a letter to people or say, hey, that's not cool?
We have had that in the past. There have been, I don't know how many, but some people selling like on Etsy and things, and we can recognize it. Like you said, we have our own colorings, obviously we can't say, oh, you have an Ohio star and that came from our software. Like we can't prove that just because the colors are the same. I don't think we can prove that, but some of them are like distinctively like, okay, this is definitely from our software. That's the same coloring. It's the same, everything is identical. And so we have had to contact those people in the past. Now we don't police it. We don't have somebody on it all the time looking for that kind of thing, but it is something that, we've had customers let us know, like, oh, we found this, and they like, oh, thank you.
That's a big,
Right.
And it's interesting how the community helps to police. Like there's a sense of like, that's not fair. Right. And I always feel like it's playground rules. Like people kind of know copyright, like they know, right? They know that certain things everybody has to share, that some things are not like some things are your own. And then there's kind of a weird in-between point, right? But it's interesting. We've been on this project, this is our 4th year, and it's interesting how important like fairness is to this community. They really do police each other in interesting ways.
Right.
So interesting. Are you okay with the designers, how much they take from you? Like as you said, you love when the designers work with it. Do you want them to give credit to using the software, or sort of as attribution important, or sort of what is your thought about people using it professionally?
We would appreciate if there's an opportunity for them to say, I designed this in Electric Quilt software. We would love that. We're not going to require it by any means. We actually, every magazine that we get that's sent to the office, Diane here at the office will go through and she'll look at the quilt that was designed and look at the designer name and be like, oh, she designed this in EQ. Let me reach out to her, see if we can like show this off on our social media, ask her if she designed it in EQ, and then we'll blog post about her or put her on social media. And it doesn't always say I designed it in EQ. It's just something that we know by who's designing it, or we can kind of tell this may have been designed in EQ. So if we don't see the line that says, I designed this in EQ, if they didn't say it, totally fine. We don't want people to feel like they have to, but we do appreciate it, because obviously we want people to know that they can design this very intricate quilt with our software, or they can design this very simple quilt, depending, it doesn't matter what style of quilt it is. We want people to know that they too can do that.
The other part, I know we went too long. So, but let me ask you just two more questions, because I'm so these are all the questions. I told you I had like a list. Tell me a little bit about the relationship between AccuQuilt, you and AccuQuilt, and is it Lori Miller that's doing the work there? Because I just think this is a game changer. Like AccuQuilt is a cutting system that makes it more accurate and awesome, and it's really cool. And you all have a system to be able to design stuff. This just seems like a perfect match. So tell me a little bit more about that relationship and how we can understand that.
We actually have been in talks with AccuQuilt for many years. We would talk to them at trade shows and try to figure out how can we connect the two pieces. One of the things that keeps us, or has always kept us from moving forward and doing something with AccuQuilt, was that their dies are dies. I mean, you cannot change the size of them.
Right.
So, they are what they are. In our software, that's the biggest thing, is you can change the size of it. So if you put a 9 patch in, say it's a 9x9, but you put it in a 12x12 space, your dies are no longer going to work. If you put in a 12x12 space of EQ.
That's really interesting.
So that's why we were always hesitant to do anything, because you can have these designs in your EQ software, but if you don't set your layout up right, and you do have all 12x12 blocks, then these are not going to work for you. Your fabric yardage is going to be off. So we were always very hesitant. And Lori came to us and said, hey, the Go Cubes, I think is what she's doing.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, right.
She's like, I'm just going to draw all these blocks in EQ and see if anybody has any interest. And we're like, that is totally fine. And we helped her figure out how to get the layout library, because it's a library file for EQ specifically. And I think we helped her with her instructions and make sure that she can, instruct the users how to use them. But other than that, it was all on her. She worked, I believe, with AccuQuilt as well to make that happen. And we are so happy to be able to send people her way, because people ask us about that all the time. Can I get AccuQuilt in EQ8? Yes, you can. Go to Lori's Etsy shop.
Right.
So it's
really
been huge. Yeah. I'm so glad that she did that. And we were always just so worried that people would, make mistakes and, have bad fabric yardage because they didn't set it into the right block space or whatnot.
Because when you use, not in a bad way, but there is a bit of waste when you do, it's just a different thing. It's not cutting fabric. It's just a different way of cutting fabric. So I would imagine I hadn't even thought about that part. That's figure out what the yardage would be. I was always thinking about it it would tell you which of the dies to use, because I find that just super annoying to sort of try to have to do the conversion. Which is really interesting. All right. And then you have classes coming up too. So tell me a little bit more about your classes. And don't you have an event happening in September? Am I right?
Yeah, those are our classes. Yeah. So our event is our EQ Academy. We offer that twice a year. spring and fall. So it's usually about April and September, sometimes into October. But it's hands-on classes to learn EQ8 software. We weren't able to do it in 2020 because of COVID, but we are excited to offer it again as a hands-on this fall. It's September 9th through 11th. And we do have openings. If I don't know when this is getting posted,
yeah,
but
I'll try to post it soon. That's really
yeah, we do have some openings in classes, and the hard part is that COVID's ever changing, and people are, kind of backing out, which we have a cancellation policy. We are letting people cancel all the way up until the event because you just don't know what's going to happen with COVID. Unfortunately, we do have to require masks, whether you're vaccinated or not. So I think that's a big thing for people. But despite any COVID-ness, it is an awesome opportunity to come and learn the software. It's 3 days, so you can take classes all 3 days, or you can take classes just one day, depending on, on your travel and how that goes and how close you are. But it is fantastic because you can work with, you work with a teacher that comes in. Lori Miller actually comes and teaches.
Yeah, right. She's doing an EQ8 and AccuQuilt Go class.
Yeah, right. And Barb Black, she's an EQ veteran. She's been with us since day one, basically. I think she started in EQ2, EQ3. So she's been with us forever. She knows the program like the back of her hand. She's teaching as well as myself and Jenny Novinsky, who is a staff member, and Ann Rudder. I think Ann's teaching. But we get the opportunity to teach the program the way we know it, which is we know all the bits and pieces and the different ways to try things. So if you're a beginner, you get the beginner exclusivity, you get to learn everything a beginner needs to know without knowing all the extra stuff. If you want to dive in and learn more, you can definitely learn more with some of the more not advanced classes, but more confident beginner classes. But there's staff inside or in each one of the classrooms to help too. So no one ever gets behind, raise your hand and a staff will come and help you. And it's just a really fun event.
All right. Hold on a second, John. There's somebody at the door. So let me just move him so that.
Okay.
Baby, it was good, almost all the way good. So the classes look really, really cool. I want to take all of them. The foundation block drawing class looks really cool. The design with EQ8 AccuQuilt, the panels and t-shirt quilt, because it looks really cool. The picture of it looks really cool. And I find panels and t-shirt quilts to be kind of stupid. So it makes me think I want to try to take that and sort of see if it's going to be better. The modern one looks great. The importing quilt, all of them look great. So really fun. And now in terms of COVID and precautions, how scared, I know you don't know, and you're not a medical person, but what kind of precautions are you taking for safety if people are interested in this? And how big is the classroom? How many people are there? Sort of, that kind of thing, Yeah,
we typically a classroom holds 24. And we're not letting the numbers get to that. We are maxing it out so that we can space students out, or maxing it out at, I think, 15 to 18. So we can space them out more. There is a 2-day beginner class, which that's always our biggest draw for this. So we are allowing more students to be in that class, but we're actually opening up 2 classrooms. There's a wall that usually divides them so that we can have a bigger space to be spaced out. Masks will be required. And we hope that everybody follows that. I know it's hard to wear a mask all day long, but they are required. And that's mostly the building that we're in is actually owned by Bowling Green State University. So it's a university building and that's their requirement. But of course we'll have, sanitizer, and hopefully we can get hopefully the weather's nice enough. We can have some outside, go get some breaks outside, and we're going to do our best. Obviously this is so hard and we want everybody to be comfortable, teachers, staff, and students. So
and it's changing all the time. And that's so amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I just think this is so cool. And I'm really excited. I feel like I want to chat with you more, but I've gone an hour, so we're going to stop because we're going to go a half an hour. Are you okay for us posting this, or do you need to review it?
I think it should be fine.
Hold on. Let me turn off the recording and hold on just 1 second.
So you've been listening to the research podcast, Just Wanna Quilt. I'm Elizabeth. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you want to spend more time with us, come to our Facebook group, Just Wanna Quilt. We're also on TikTok, a little bit on Instagram, and we also have a website. We are also a Grace dealer, which is super weird. So if you're interested in a long arm, come visit us at our website. It's how we support the project. And I don't know, I hope you have a chance to quilt today. Thanks for listening. And the website is JustWannaQuilt.com.